My name is Adwoa. At the moment, I live in Brattleboro, Vermont. So if you think about the broad spectrum of Christianity and liturgical, contemplative mysticism, for me, for a long time, it was the charismatic and the Pentecostal, which is where I came from. Those traditions and that sort of wild, free surrender to the Spirit was what I knew of God. The women in my family, the matriarchs of the family, they had that kind of experience. And over time, I began to have that kind of experience, to dream the way that they dreamed, to dream when my elders and ancestors were going to die. You know, these sorts of very intense kinds of experiences. They were too much for me, though. I didn't have a way to contain them, a way to come near them without being, you know, Elijah with the mountain falling apart underneath him. I ended up in the UCC, and in the UCC, I actually came to know liturgy because the woman who was the pastor actually had been a Catholic religious. And so she was doing liturgy and sacrament in the church. Covertly, nobody really understood what was happening, but something spoke to me. So when I went to join that church, and I felt like I needed to come out as a Christian who has those kinds of Pentecostal charismatic experiences, she goes, there's a woman named Teresa of Avila, you should read her, etc. And that began a journey all the way over there. But what I realized is that it's not a line. For me, it's a circle. And that circle doesn't quite touch, but there's a magnetic pull between them. Both of them are responding in a particular way, in a contextual way, to the invitation of the Holy Spirit to let go and let her be. So I'm not going to be able to tell you most of my story as it relates to that, but I will tell you that I am an oblate of a very cloistered Episcopal monastic community, and I lived with them for a while, and there were many riches of that time, and much of it was unhealthy, and I can share more about that privately. But when I left there, I left and I was very, very sick. I was also physically, I was also very, very broken spiritually. Everything I thought I knew was gone. Death was in front of my face, and nobody wants to hear somebody in their 30s talk about death, like really talk about death, you know. So I mention that, though, because one of the things I realized a couple of years later, I got up in the morning, I was in a lot of pain, I'm in Boston, Massachusetts, I want to go to Eucharist at the monastery at 7 o'clock in the morning. If I get this one bus, I'm going to get there. It took all the energy in my body to get to the bus station as the bus was pulling out. It just broke my heart. So I went back home and I said, fine, I'll do another 20-minute sit. And as I sat down in the silence, I had this image, and I was in so much pain, physical pain, and I had this image of Christ looking at me and saying, this is my body. And in that, what I received for the first time ever was a wake up that I was mostly inhabiting rooms that look like this. I wasn't seeing myself, and I wasn't identifying the fact that the riches of the Holy Spirit through the contemplative journey are as much the heritage and the dignity of that tradition and what I grew up in as it was of that tradition. It has been heartbreaking to leave the monastery, heartbreaking. But I'll tell you what, I don't define contemplative by the practice. I still consider myself to have a contemplative vocation. It is more about being than doing. It's not so much about how my contemplation informs my action. It's about how to live a contemplative vocation that has primarily been nurtured over there, right in the middle of all of here. And I suspect that there are other people in the room who maybe have that kind of vocation, the vocation of that surrender to the living Spirit, all that it costs, all that it lets in, and letting that gaze radiate on the world through them. How do we do that? How do we take what was bred there and make it the hope of the calling of our humanity? And I think we need that if our humanity will survive.